Imagine living on an island where everyone seems to know everyone. Malta is tiny, smaller than many major cities. And in 2017, one woman became famous for writing about the secrets of some of the most powerful people living there. Politicians, businessmen, offshore companies, suspicious financial deals. Her name was Daphne Caruana Galizia. And on October 16th, 2017, Daphne walked out of her home, got into her car, and started driving. Minutes later, a bomb hidden beneath her seat exploded. Daphne was killed instantly. But killing the journalist didn't kill the story, because investigators would eventually uncover 3 hitmen, 1 middleman, secret recordings, and one of Malta's richest businessmen, Yorgen Fenech. Tonight, we're going to Malta, and this story begins long before the bomb. Welcome to the podcast You Can't Unhear. Daphne wasn't some anonymous reporter working quietly behind a newspaper desk. By 2017, she was arguably Malta's most famous and most controversial journalist. She had worked as a columnist, but eventually became best known for her personal investigative blog, Running Commentary. And Daphne wrote aggressively. Corruption, money laundering, government contracts, politicians, businessmen, people with enormous influence. Her reporting attracted hundreds of thousands of readers, which is remarkable when you remember Malta itself had a population of less than 500,000 at the time. But being that visible came with a price. She faced lawsuits, threats, harassment. Her bank accounts were frozen in one libel dispute. Her home had previously been targeted. Her family's dogs had been killed in separate incidents. And increasingly, Daphne believed she was being watched. Still, she kept publishing. Then came 2016. Millions of leaked documents from the Panamanian law firm Mossack Fonseca exposed how wealthy and powerful people around the world used offshore companies. The leak became known as the Panama Papers, and Malta appeared inside it. Daphne, working with her son Matthew and other journalists, focused on 2 politically connected men. Keith Schembri, Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Joseph Muscat, and Government Minister Konrad Mitzi. Both had secret offshore structures. And investigators later discovered documents indicating their Panama companies expected payments from 2 companies, one called McBridge and another called 17 Black. Who owned 17 Black was initially unclear, but Daphne knew it mattered. She wrote about it, and she kept digging. What she apparently didn't know before her death was that 17 Black belonged to someone extremely powerful, a businessman named Yorgen Fenech. Fenech came from one of Malta's wealthiest business families. Hotels, casinos, property, gaming. He was an heir to the Theuma's business empire. And crucially, he was also involved in Electrogas, the consortium behind a major new power station project promoted by the Maltese government. At the time of her death, Daphne and her son Matthew were examining leaked information involving Electrogas. Matthew later testified that his mother planned to bring international journalists into the investigation. After Daphne was killed, Reuters and other journalists eventually revealed something she hadn't managed to publish herself. Yorgen Fenech owned 17 Black. And suddenly, Daphne's unfinished reporting looked extremely important. But before investigators ever reached Fenech, somebody had to actually build the bomb. According to the prosecution's case, the plot began months before Daphne died. A taxi driver and gambling figure named Melvin Theuma would eventually become one of the most important characters in this entire story. Theuma says Yorgen Fenech approached him and wanted Daphne killed. According to Theuma, the agreed price was €150,000. Theuma says he then contacted men capable of carrying out the job: brothers Alfred and George DiGiorgio, and their associate, Vince Muscat. Not the Prime Minister Joseph Muscat, different person. These men began watching Daphne, her routines, her house, her movements. And according to later evidence, the killers considered different ways of doing it. Eventually, they settled on a bomb. The explosive device was military grade. According to testimony from Vince Muscat, the bomb was delivered concealed inside something disturbingly ordinary: a children's shoebox. The device was eventually placed beneath the driver's seat of Daphne's car. Then, the men waited. They didn't need to be standing beside her when it exploded. The bomb could be triggered remotely. One person would watch Daphne's house. Another would be offshore, on a boat, waiting for the signal. That afternoon, Daphne was at home in Bidnaja. Her son Matthew was there. Daphne left the house, got into her Peugeot, and drove away. Matthew later remembered hearing an enormous explosion. He ran outside. Smoke was rising nearby. Then he realized it was his mother's car. The bomb had detonated shortly after she left home. Daphne Caruana Galizia, 53 years old, was dead. Her final blog post had been published less than an hour earlier, and Malta exploded politically almost as violently as the car had physically. People wanted to know, who would want Daphne dead? The uncomfortable answer was, the list was enormous. Less than 2 months later, police carried out raids. 10 people were initially detained. Eventually, 3 men were charged with carrying out the assassination: George DiGiorgio, Alfred DiGiorgio, and Vince Muscat. But arresting the men accused of physically carrying out the bombing created an even bigger question. Who paid them? Because investigators increasingly believed this wasn't simply a personal vendetta. It looked like a contract killing. And for nearly 2 years, the person allegedly sitting between the killers and whoever ordered the murder remained hidden. Then, in November 2019, police arrested Melvin Theuma. Interestingly, they didn't initially arrest him for Daphne's murder. He was being investigated over unrelated alleged financial and gambling crimes. But Theuma had insurance. Not financial insurance, recordings. He had secretly recorded conversations, including conversations with Yorgen Fenech. Theuma told investigators, "I was the middleman," and he offered to explain the murder in exchange for immunity. On November 19th, Prime Minister Joseph Muscat announced that Theuma could receive a pardon if his information proved truthful. And apparently someone else realized the situation was becoming dangerous because the next morning, Yorgen Fenech was leaving Malta. At approximately 5 in the morning on November 20th, 2019, Fenech's luxury yacht left Portomasso Marina. But he didn't get far. Malta's armed forces intercepted the yacht, and Fenech was arrested. Prosecutors later described it as an attempt to escape. Fenech disputes that characterization. But visually, it's almost impossible to separate from this case. One of Malta's wealthiest businessmen, whose secret company had been connected to the corruption Daphne was investigating, was intercepted at sea 2 years after her assassination. And then, Fenech started talking. Fenech denied ordering Daphne's murder. Instead, he pointed towards someone even closer to Malta's government: Keith Schembri. Remember him? Prime Minister Joseph Muscat's chief of staff. The same Keith Schembri whose offshore financial structures Daphne had investigated, and a close friend of Fenech. Fenech claimed Schembri was really behind the murder. Schembri denied it. He was questioned, but released without charge in relation to Daphne's murder, and police have said he was never considered a suspect in the assassination. But politically, the damage was enormous. Schembri resigned. Konrad Mitzi resigned as tourism minister. Protesters filled the streets, and pressure mounted on Prime Minister Joseph Muscat. By January 2020, Muscat was gone too. He resigned as Prime Minister. To be clear, Joseph Muscat has never been accused of involvement in Daphne's murder. But the assassination and the investigations surrounding people close to his government had helped create a political earthquake. Meanwhile, the criminal cases continued. In 2021, Vince Muscat pleaded guilty to his role in Daphne's murder. He received a reduced sentence of 15 years after cooperating with authorities. Then, in October 2022, something dramatic happened during the trial of Alfred and George DiGiorgio. On the very first day, after initially pleading not guilty, the brothers changed their pleas. Guilty. Each received 40 years in prison. Then, in 2025, two more men, Robert Agius and Jamie Vella, were convicted of supplying the bomb. Both received life sentences. So, we now know who helped obtain the bomb, we know who planted it, we know who detonated it, and we have a self-confessed middleman. Which leaves one final question. Who ordered it? Fenech was charged in November 2019 with complicity in Daphne's murder and criminal association. He pleaded not guilty. And then, nothing happened quickly. Year after year, legal challenges delayed the trial. Fenech remained imprisoned for more than 5 years awaiting trial. In January 2025, a court finally granted him bail under extremely strict conditions. He had to surrender his passport, stay away from Malta's coast and airport, and avoid prosecution witnesses. Then, on July 1st, 2026, almost 9 years after Daphne's murder, the trial finally began. The prosecution's theory is straightforward. Daphne was investigating corruption, including matters connected to Fenech's business interests. Fenech feared what she might publish. So, according to prosecutors, he paid Melvin Theuma, who hired the killers. Theuma testified that Fenech gave him the money and repeatedly checked whether the murder was going ahead. Theuma even told jurors something particularly chilling. According to him, while Fenech was aboard his yacht before the assassination, Fenech sent a message suggesting he was preparing champagne. Theuma interpreted it as excitement that Daphne was finally going to be killed. Fenech denies that interpretation and denies ordering the murder entirely. And then jurors heard Theuma's recordings. Remember, after Daphne's murder, Theuma apparently became paranoid. He worried he might become the person everyone else needed to eliminate. So he secretly recorded conversations, including conversations with Fenech. Those recordings are messy. People talk over each other, names appear, stories conflict, and both sides interpret them differently. Prosecutors say they demonstrate Fenech's knowledge and involvement. Fenech says they show something else, that he was trying to manage a dangerous situation because Theuma was blackmailing him while protecting his friend, Keith Schembri. And this week, the trial became even more dramatic. Fenech did something defendants don't always do. He testifies. His story is essentially this. Yes, he knew about discussions involving Daphne. Yes, he knew Theuma. Yes, he handed Theuma large amounts of money. But he says he did not commission the murder. Instead, he accused Keith Schembri of being the true mastermind. According to Fenech, Schembri hated Daphne because of her reporting. Fenech says he became trapped afterward, paying Theuma because he was being blackmailed while trying to protect Schembri. The prosecution basically responded, "That doesn't make sense." During cross-examination, prosecutors confronted Fenech with his own admissions. He knew the alleged price. He discussed the plot. He paid money. He passed information to Theuma. Yet he insists none of that means he ordered Daphne's death. His defense says investigators became fixated on Fenech and failed to properly investigate Schembri. Schembri continues to deny involvement. This is the question that has haunted Malta since 2017. Was Daphne killed because she was getting too close to something involving Fenech? That's the prosecution theory. Was she killed because of reporting involving Keith Schembri? That's what Fenech's defense now argues. Or was the real motive more complicated, involving overlapping business interests, political relationships, and people who all had reasons to fear what Daphne might publish? The jury doesn't have to solve every mystery in Malta. They have a narrower job. They have to decide whether prosecutors proved, beyond reasonable doubt, that Yorgen Fenech was criminally involved in arranging Daphne Caruana Galizia's murder. And there is something deeply strange about this story. Daphne died before publicly revealing who owned 17 Black. After she was murdered, other journalists continued her investigation, and they discovered Yorgen Fenech. Journalists from around the world created the Daphne Project, continuing stories she had been working on. Instead of killing the investigation, her assassination internationalized it. Suddenly, journalists outside Malta were examining the same documents. But it made the stories she was investigating much louder. As of August 28, 2026, Yorgen Fenech has not been convicted of Daphne's murder. His trial is still underway, and the alleged mastermind is still being decided by a jury. If Fenech is convicted of complicity in murder, he faces life imprisonment. If he's acquitted, Malta will once again be left with an uncomfortable question. Who wanted Daphne Caruana Galizia dead? Daphne spent years exposing secrets, and eventually, someone decided she had learned too much. 9 years later, the people who physically carried out her murder are in prison. Now a jury is deciding whether Yorgen Fenech was the man who put the entire plan in motion. He says no. The prosecution says yes. And when that verdict comes, we'll finally know whether Malta's courts agree. But whatever happens, the investigation Daphne was working on survived her. And maybe that's the one thing her killers didn't plan for. Thanks for joining me tonight. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any updates about this case. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next episode of the podcast You Can't Unhear.